Hey, this is C&D Chow. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC Fight Night 31. Overall, I'd kind of call it something of a mixed bag. I think this card definitely was lacking in name power. Some fights really didn't belong on the main card. Some pretty cool finishes, Lineker, Machida, of course. Some odd finishes like the Manuan Gallard fights. And even deeper issues there with Nice, a grounded opponent. Stuff with Andrade versus Sexton and whether corners should stop the fights and whatnot. So there's a couple talking points for sure. As far as bonuses go, Lyoto Machida earned the knockout of the night. Nicholas Musquet won submission of the night, and Barnett and Craig picked up Fun Night honors. My picks, I got 7 out of 12. 11 if you want to count the no contest, so it wasn't too bad. Let's get started. Lyoto the Dragon Machida defeated Mark Munoz by head kick 3 minutes and 10 seconds in the first round. I believe Munoz only threw 3 strikes and none of them connected. Machida actually set up this head kick with body kicks first. It's really interesting just because it kind of looks like Munoz took a little bit on his hand and at best his fingers, but I think I think it may have just been gotten above the fingers or at the fingers, and that was all shin too, shin hitting skull. So what's cool is that Machida's all class. He could have pounced and did some follow-up punches, and he just kind of stopped himself. Actually apologized for knocking him out. And apparently there was a thing, because these two are training partners and legit friends, that the winner of this fight has to pay for dinner. There are pictures of them having dinner, actually, on Twitter and Instagram. This was a really great victory for Machida, though, and it really makes the middleweight division extremely interesting. I believe the UFC wants to match up Vitor Belfort with Machida. I'm assuming win or lose against Dan Henderson. Gegard Mousasi threw his name in the hat to fight Machida. Jacare, I know they train together, so I don't know if they'll fight each other, but hey, Munoz fought Machida, they're buddies, so could happen, not probable. You got Michael Bisping hovering around there as well, but I think Machida just clowns him. Honestly, I think after if Machida gets another win or two, I'd love to see him fight Weidman if Weidman stays champ. It's just one of those things where stylistically Machida is a trouble for everyone. Even other strikers. But, he's good at defending takedowns, and he can beat most people up on the feet. So, really interesting matchups for Machida, and he's someone that I think a lot of people are looking forward to as far as seeing him get into title contention in middleweight. Physically speaking, too, he looked really in shape. Sometimes he looks like he's carrying some extra body fat at 205, but he looked, just physically really in shape. And whatnot, well suited for the weight class, Mark Munoz, he loses to guys and gets trounced by guys like Machida and Chris Weidman, the elite. He'll be competitive with the Okamis and Damian Maias, and then he'll just look like a top 10 world beater, fighting the Tim Boesch's, the CB Dolloways, and whatnot, he's definitely on that, top 10, but, numbers 8, 9, or 10, something like that. And they're good fights for him. You can give him, Costa Philippou. You can revisit the Bisping fight. Munoz versus Belcher. Some of those guys that are, top 10 to 15 wouldn't be too bad. The winner or loser, I'd probably go with the loser of Natal Kennedy, Kennedy Munoz should be interesting. So there's still some pretty good fights for him. Okay, next fight after that, Melvin Gillard versus Ross Pearson went to a no contest after an accidental knee in the first round. They will now fight at a later date in the London card. I believe it's 5 months later. This fight more or less just brings into question the whole knees down opponent thing and just how ridiculous the rule is. Because the thing that was down wasn't Pearson's knee, it was his hand. And the problem with that too is instead of protecting his face from knees, knowing the rules, he put his hand down to defend a knee. It just doesn't make any logical sense. One thing is, when there are rules in place in mixed martial arts, I understand the sport is a very violent sport. But, at the same time, they're trying to mitigate the rules to make it as safe for the competitors as possible. You can't eye gouge, you can't hit people below the belt, no soccer kicks. But this idea with knees to a grounded opponent, one, you have to redefine grounded at this point because, quite honestly, too many fighters now are just gaming the system. It's not even a point where they're at some sort of like disadvantageous position too. They're just putting their fingertip down and saying that they're downed. It's a really dumb rule, and it's just so nonsensical. And in this case, it leads to negative consequences for both fighters. I mean, because it's a no contest, and Melvin's lucky it's a no contest and not a DQ. He has to now wait 5 months. Both of them have to wait 5 months to fight. In Melvin's case, Pearson's a good win. He beat Danzig before that, or it would have been a good win. He could have been moving up the ladder. Instead, he has to wait for a rematch against a guy that it looks like he would have beaten him because what stopped the fight was the cut. So if that rule wasn't in place, Pearson would have lost by TKO due to a doctor stoppage, and he was just getting blasted. I mean, that's the thing. And like I said, I don't know if Melvin or Pearson, do they get their win bonus? So now they're losing money because of a really dumb, antiquated rule. The 3 rules I'd change would be change the definite. Well, the rule I'd change really is what's a grounded opponent. In my point of view, I think your torso should be on the ground, not even knees to the ground. Not even if you have like 1 or 2 knees that are touching the ground. I remember seeing a World Series of Fighting fight with Jorge Santiago versus Gerald Harris, and Harris had like 2 knees on the ground for like a couple seconds, and it was just so strange. Like, man, if Santiago could knee this guy, he could win the fight, and he was losing. I mean, so it's also now a thing where it's a difference maker between winning a fight and losing a fight. I mean, there's a lot of consequences to this whole like no knees down opponent thing. Change the definition. I think like your butt, your body, your back needs to be touching the floor to be considered downed. At the very least, get rid of the rule where like your hands are touching the floor and that's considered downed. I think that's a dumb rule. If you need to do it one step at a time, then that's fine. At the very least, if you have 1 knee to the ground, I mean, the fighter's kind of at a very disadvantageous position, at least. So even if you game the system, say you change the rules and you game the system in that sense, at the very least, yeah, you put your knee on the ground, kind of at a disadvantageous position, So there's a consequence if you don't want to get knee to the face. If the rule was like 1 knee has to be down on the ground or something like that. I don't like that rule. I think you should be able to blast. If it were up to me, knees to have a grounded opponent, period, are illegal. Period. That would be cool. I mean, it'd be pretty vicious. I remember Sakurai versus Shinya Aoki, and Sakurai's just blasting. I mean, he killed him. He killed Aoki. I mean, that was pretty brutal. That's kind of one of those reasons why, if you want to call grounded, that was pretty vicious. But like something does need to change. I understand, it's a vicious sport and whatnot, and they do want to mitigate the danger as much as they can, but at the same time, I mean, in this case, this rule isn't in place for the safety of fighters or anything like that. It's in place for fighters at this point to game the system. It's not causing any more injury or some sort of extremely unsafe work environment or something, having the current rule in place. I think most people know it's a dumb rule, and the problem is getting rules changed by the athletic commissions is like near impossible. That's the thing that sucks. I mean, other sports, you got like yearly reviews of the rules and the sport and whatnot, and there are just a lot of antiquated rules. 12 to 6 elbows, no up kicks to a downed opponent. No knees to what's considered a grounded opponent. It's very ridiculous at this point. It should definitely change. It should be, but I don't think anyone will happen to it. But I'll still talk about it. And next I have that Jimmy Manuwa beat Ryan Jimmo by TKO. It's an injury TKO in the second round. This is the second time that Manuwa won by a no contact TKO. He did that against Cyril Diabate. Just by like some freak leg injury. Nonetheless, Manuwa is one of the more exciting prospects at 205. And I talked about it too, that in the division, they don't have a lot of prospects. So you really need guys like Manuwa stepping up. He is an exciting action fighter. He's never been past the second round. Or he's never seen the third round, And one thing I did like about Manuwa and the strategy here is that Ryan Jimmo is really well known for clinching and bringing guys against the cage. And Manuwa did a really nice anti-clinch strategy, by whether his back was against the cage or not, he would just start kneeing Ryan Jimmo's leg, and you can tell legs, and you can tell that Jimmo didn't like it. It was really good anti-clinch strategy. Manuwa's stand-up is really good. He hasn't been fighting for a long time, so he doesn't have a lot of fight years on him, which is good. But he is 33, so he definitely needs to climb up the ladder probably a little sooner rather than later. I'm thinking Manuwa gets the winner of Fejao versus Prokrayak. Fight I'd like to see is Manuwa versus Thiago Silva. And if you want to go even further than that, the winner of Shogun versus Tahuna for Manuwa. Ryan Jimmo, this guy, he's probably might be out for a while. One thing about him too, he gets the body lock a lot. He gets a clinch a lot, and he just puts guys against the cage and really doesn't do much with it. And it's like, man, learn a trip takedown or something, seriously. Learn a trip takedown. Learn to transition from the body lock to like a single or double leg takedown, because he's been doing this a lot. He does this a lot of fights where he just, things get a little hairy in the feet, clinch, put him up against the cage, kind of hold him there, throw some short knees and whatnot. But otherwise, it's a lot of clinching against the cage with Jimmo, which is it's kind of sad for him, because his stand-up's actually not that bad. He's not a bad fighter or anything. It's just, I don't know if he can put it all together sometimes. Otherwise, and if they keep him, just more lower to mid-tier of the division. Next fight, I thought Norman Park beat John Tuck by unanimous decision. The story of the fight really was that Park kept landing combinations. He got that, found a home for his left hand a lot of times on Tuck. And Tuck also, his cardio isn't that great. One thing with Park is he does lack power in his strikes, unfortunately. But he makes up for it in volume and combination punching. It's good for Park. It's tough to say these two are like prospects, but they're not like these real standout prospects per se. I'd just like to see him against more like lower to mid tier guys. Okay, next fight after that, Nicholas Muske beat Alessio Sakara by armbar in the first round. I think Alessio Sakara should be cut from the UFC, to be perfectly honest with you. The guy just is not a winning fighter. He's billed as a kickboxer, and he's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but there's a difference from gi jiu-jitsu, no gi jiu-jitsu, and MMA jiu-jitsu. And quite honestly, you really don't get to see this great ground game from Alessio Sakara, to be perfectly honest with you. Even the way he fell into that armbar, I'm just going to say it. I'm not, it's right. Looking at it from a layman's point of view, I know fighters probably look at it from a different way. Seemed like a very beginner mistake from Alessio Sakara, to be perfectly honest with you, leaving his arm like that. If he is indeed a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I heard he's a black belt. Nonetheless, Sakara, offensive kickboxing pretty good, defensively not very good. I mean, the guy's getting wobbled, his chin's not that great. Yeah, he might be cut from the UFC. He's just not winning. And Nicholas Muske, I think he usually fights at welterweight. I'd like to just see him fight some lower to mid-tier guys at welterweight. Next fight after that, John Lineker beat Phil Harris by TKO in the first round. I believe it was by a body punch. Man, if he can beat the scale like he beats up opponents, dude, man, this guy would be in title contention so fast. This guy, Lineker, third time missing weight at flyweight. I mean, I guess where I'd put him though is he should get the winner of Ali Bagatinov versus Tim Elliott. The winner of that. Maybe you can give him Scotty Jorgensen or even Ian McCall, because I know McCall's out. Jorgensen needs an opponent. I don't think that's going to happen. But someone up there in flyweight, you know what I mean? Phil Harris, he's a good grappler for the division. It's a lot of other good grapplers, though. And a lot of guys that can probably beat him up on the feet. So, I mean, they'll probably keep Phil Harris for sure. I can't really see him winning too much in the UFC, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, on to the prelims. Al Iaquinta beat Piotr Hallman by unanimous decision. 2 30-27 scorecards, 129-28. I gave Hallman the first round and Iaquinta the second and third round. Part of Iaquinta, he's a good prospect. Actually, both these guys are good prospects. Hallman, despite losing, still pretty good. Very game. The thing with Hallman, he's very game. Has a good ground game. Stand-up's not too bad. Iaquinta, he's an interesting prospect as well. He still needs to listen to his corner better. I think sometimes he gets lured into brawling or standing in front of his opponent a lot. When he starts cutting angles and boxing people up and defending takedowns, he looks really good, like a really good prospect. He has solid wrestling and good boxing. But there's some times where it seems like he has mental lapses or something like that. Otherwise, I'm curious to see what happens with them. With both these guys, I think they should just get more lower to mid-tier guys. I know Iaquinta called out Anthony Njokuani, and I think that's actually a good fight. Next round that, Luke Barnett beat Andrew Craig by rear naked choke in the second round. Luke Barnett was somewhat impressive here. I say somewhat just because he still kind of fights like Stephen Struve, where he's really tall, but it's he's susceptible to the overhand right, multiple overhand rights, and the guy keeps getting hit with power shots despite being so tall. However, I liked what I saw from him. He was a little better, or a lot better at utilizing range. You kind of know what he's doing in a sense. It's like if he's at range, he's gonna punch. And inside, he does go for the knees, and he does have that one takedown. Say that judo style takedown. It's not Kesugatami. But, still, nonetheless, Andrew Curry's a solid prospect himself. Luke Barnett beat him pretty good, actually. Dropped him multiple times, whatnot. That cheering, not good. I mean, that was just a very green thing to do from Luke Barnett. But, still a developing prospect at middleweight. The next fight after that, Jessica Andrade beat Rosie Sexton by unanimous decision. 2 scorecards of 30-26. 1 scorecard of 30-27. Sure, this fight really is Rogan constantly calling the fight to be stopped. Andrade was pretty much looking like Vanderlei Silva there, and Rosie Sexton was just eating punches. I think that the ref does play some responsibility. There are times that the ref probably could have stopped the fight. But the problem is, Rosie was still standing, and at times was fighting back. She was just getting battered. I think the responsibility for calling off the fight would actually go more towards Sexton's cornermen, not really doing their jobs. Dana White also had something to say about this fight, and it actually wasn't very... I personally find it a bit offensive. He said, "It's a fight like that made me not like women's MMA, actually. I saw a very one-sided, mismatched fight." Now, the reason why I find this quote just, not cool, I guess, is... he's using this fight as if it's some sort of representation of women's MMA. It's like he wanted the corner to throw in the towel for Junior Dos Santos Cain Velasquez 3. And it's Junior Dos Santos was getting bad by Cain, but he never said that it's fights like that make me hate not like men's MMA. You know what I mean? It's just. This idea that this fight's I don't know, somehow some big evidence for the bigger picture of women's MMA and some sort of bigger representation for women's MMA. It's a bit ridiculous to me, I remember Thiago Silva was beating up Matt Hamill the other day, to the point Hamill couldn't stand. Well, does he not? Does that fight make him not like men's MMA now too? You can't. I don't know. He just kind of pigeonholed them as just women fighters instead of just they're MMA fighters. He really he kind of separate. I know they are separate things in a sense, but it was definitely pointed just towards women's fighters, even though fights like this happen on the men's side. That's why it's kind of that's a problem as a whole for mixed martial arts when you see mismatches like that, and the fight fights not being stopped by the cornerman or the refs or whatever. It's not some sort of representation of women's MMA, I think. I think Rosie Sexton after this fight though is probably going to get cut. She's really small for the weight class. She doesn't pack a lot of power. She's a good ground game though. Always game. I think Jessica Andrade can get Jessica Evil Eye. Or the winner of Amanda Nunes versus Jermaine Duran to be next. Next fight after that, Cole Miller beat Andy Ogle by unanimous decision. The start of the fight was Cole Miller taking Ogle's back in the first and second round. And this is overall ground game. It went for a nice elevator sweep and whatnot. Then an armbar tapped. It was, really good ground from Miller. Olo tried to rally back in the third, but it just wasn't enough. The story really is, though, it's that Cole Miller going full heel on England. He called out Dennis Seaver. He particularly called out a guy named Colin McGruber. I'm guessing he means Conor McGregor, but this Colin McGruber guy versus Cole Miller. If it is indeed Conor McGregor, I know that McGregor's out for a while. He has really good stand-up, exciting personality, exciting fights. I mean, it's an interesting test if that fight ever happens, just because Miller does have a good ground game, but I think he'd be beaten up on the feet. Against Dennis Seaver, I think Dennis Seaver would destroy him. I mean, that guy's huge. He hits hard. I think Seaver would beat up Miller on the feet and just not get taken down whatsoever. So it was really good, but, with Cole Miller, I guess trash talking, it's the way to get your name out there and get bigger fights sometimes, He's been stuck in, the Facebook fight, Facebook for a while as of late. This was a much needed win for him. Andy Ogle, he's the guy that continues to surprise me at the Ultimate Fighter. I did not think much of him on the show, but he's actually turned out to be pretty decent. Just more lower to mid-tier guys for him. Next fight with that, Jimmy Hettis beat Robert Whiteford by triangle choke in the second round. Good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills from Jimmy Hettis. He was coming off a long layoff. This guy's judo and his overall grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are top-notch. Stand-up still needs a lot of work, but, still a prospect to look out for. Still really young. Robert Whiteford, and both these guys, if Robert Whiteford stays in the UFC, it's more lower to mid-tier guys for him. Hettis, it's more lower to mid-tier guys for him as well. And finally, Brad Scott beat Michael Cooper by, by a standing guillotine in the first round. I think Michael Cooper's going to be cut. I believe he lost his last fight against Tom Lawler by front choke as well in the first or second round. Can't really use him. He's not the most winning fighter either. So, I can see him get cut. Brad Scott just pretty much saved his job. I don't know if he'll still fight in middleweight. I know he fought in Tough Smashes, and he fought Robert Whitaker in the final, if I'm not mistaken, at welterweight. Makes me curious to see if he'll go back to middleweight. Or welterweight. So that's it for my post-fight analysis for UFC Fight Night 31. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.